Park, how would you help encourage strict enforcement of illegal parking laws to rid us of junk trucks, etc.?
Well, actually, I think I'm the one calling for strict parking enforcement in the ward. One of the things that I put forward on my website, and I've talked publicly to a lot of you, is about the fact that we do need to enforce the laws that are in place, the ordinances that are in place. We don't need to expand zone parking in the ward. We simply need to go about the business of enforcing parking laws that are already in place. And we need to work with the mayor's office to create public parking facilities for people who are visiting our community and people who live in the community. You know, when the end of the day comes, you read the newspapers, you follow what's happening in city government, there's one guy that makes parking happen in any neighborhood in the city. That's the mayor. Can't have parking in your community or expect to have you parking in your community if you don't have a good relationship with the mayor's office. That's going to be one of the things that I fix. I also believe very strongly that parking enforcement would pay for itself in this neighborhood. We have people who operate used car businesses on Clark Street in the summertime. We need to address these things. It's a simple matter, but it's not something that the beat police should be doing. It's something that parking enforcement should be doing, and we need to get the resources here that are going to clean the streets up.
Well, I don't know, the people calling my office aren't exactly complaining about parking tickets, aren't exactly concerned about lax parking enforcement. I think that's one thing that the police department does very well here in this neighborhood is write tickets. I think what we need to do is not concentrate on writing tickets, but coming up with ways that we can provide as much parking as possible. We have been very aggressive at towing abandoned cars. We remove unneeded parking signs, and I invite any of you who think you see a parking restriction sign that's really not necessary for public safety to please call our office. But we also need to concentrate on how can we get people to rely less on the automobile. That's why I was very proud and happy to work with the Center for Neighborhood Technology to bring iGo to Rogers Park, to give people an alternative to car ownership. Right over there at the Citgo station, you can get a car for just a few hours to do errands or visit a friend or what have you. You don't need to own a car. You don't need to have it parked on the street. We also have to encourage more use of public transportation, and that will require cleaning up the CTA, reordering the priorities of the CTA, and making sure that the CTA is once again an efficient transit system, and that we take care of first things first and at least make sure the trains run on time, which is why I've called for hearings to try to bring more accountability to the CTA so that we have more people riding the CTA, less people owning cars, and more parking available for those who need cars.
I believe we do need to expand parking in the community. I believe we need to look at ways that we can bring public parking garages toward our commercial districts on Morris and on Howard. And I think that's a necessity because I think we do need more parking in the community. However, I also believe that the most important thing we need to do is to focus on public transportation. I've been saying this for quite a while. I went to the RTA meeting that they had here in the ward where the only person from the 49th Ward was me at that meeting with Harry Osterman and Mary Ann Smith. And let me tell you, the RTA, meaning the CTA as well, has got an enormous funding issue. We need to be able to encourage ridership on public transportation. To do that, we've got to get them the funds. And as aldermen and working with the city council, we're the bull in the china shop here in the state of Illinois. We need to put pressure on our state legislature to work with people like Harry Osterman to be able to find new ways to raise revenue to help fund public transportation. We live in the city because we don't want to drive. That's why we live here. If we wanted to do a lot of driving, we'd be living in the country. We need to push on public transportation and get it funded, and I would be an advocate for doing that, a very aggressive advocate. Thank you.
The question was about parking, and I'll mention the CTA for a second myself, and then I'll return to the original question. The thing with the CTA right now is that they're facing a $110 million budget shortfall. They're talking about 30% service cuts. They won't specify what they are. This is something I want everybody to know, because if you do one other thing tonight, when you go home, write a letter to the state of Illinois, to Osterman, to Carol Ronan, and to Governor Blagojevich, and tell them to come through with that money, because if they don't, they're going to cut our services 30%. They're not going to cut the brown line, you know that. They're going to cut the red line, you know, so that is important. As far as parking is concerned, the bottom line is, this is the densest community in Chicago, as I've said. Last year, the city of Chicago took in about roughly $140 million off of parking tickets. They're making big money off of this community doing this. You know, we talk about, well, you know, you really don't need a car, and generally speaking, maybe not everybody does, but I believe everybody at this table's got one. You know, you should have the right, you've got the right to own a vehicle and live in Rogers Park. One of the things that I want to see happen through my Neighbors for a Healthy Rogers Park group is a household car survey, which we're doing as part of our run-up for our disaster plan. I believe we can get federal funding for this from Homeland Security to help pay for this, and now we can also use it to figure out what we're going to do with parking here. We don't want to build big parking garages until we're sure of exactly where it needs to be and what our needs precisely are, but I do believe this is something that it bleeds from the poor greatly in excess of the wealthy. Thank you.